All good.
Welcome, everyone. We'll start out with some comments from Cheryl, announcements on how to behave during this meeting.
Okay, so as a reminder from yesterday, this is a hybrid meeting, so we're using an Owl audio device. It's pretty sensitive, so if we can just keep conversations one person at a time, and folks in the back, if you need to take a call or have a conversation, if you can please take it out to the lobby. Those of you joining online, we ask that you please keep yourself muted unless you're actively providing public comment, so we can reduce any feedback or interruptions. If you're joining by phone only online, if you could please send an email to housing@mt.gov with your name and the company that you work for, so we can capture that for the official meeting minutes. And this is our big letter of intent, invitation to apply. So right after the board takes some action on approving minutes, we'll move into the voting for all the developers anxiously awaiting in the back of the room. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Jen.
Thank you. Thank you. Now is the time in our meeting for any public comments that are in the purview of the commission, but not on the agenda. So do we have any public comments today? Seeing none, let's go to introductions. We'll start with the board members, and board members, if I'll call on you, and if you would just say your name again and the city that you're from. So we'll start out with Bruce Posey.
Bruce Posey, Billings.
I want to mention that Bruce has recused himself from the voting for this session due to a conflict of interest. I'm Sheila Rice, board vice chair from Great Falls. John?
John Grant, Helena.
Jeanette McKee, Hamilton.
Richard Miltonberger, Helena.
Rachel Arthur, Great Falls.
All right, let's move into the board staff, and Cheryl and Joe will introduce them.
Sure. So Cheryl Cohen, executive director.
Jason Hanson, multifamily program manager.
Nathan Bilyeu with the law firm of Jackson, Murdo and Grant, counsel to the board.
Jessica John, executive assistant to the board.
Joe Philippus, operations manager. Brian Martin, multifamily asset.
I'm Jesse Innes, program specialist.
Jessica Michael, single family homeownership program manager. Julie Flynn, community housing program manager. Vicki Bauer, county finance manager.
And then if Joe could please read board staff or housing division staff that are joining online.
Yes, ma'am. Megan Surgener, Mary Palkovich. Kelly Regula. Nicole Newman. Julie Pope. Danielle Bauer. And that appears to be all from housing.
Thank you. Let's move on to the audience, and then we'll add those who are currently online joining. So we can start in this corner. We can go around.
Andrew Schnellius, State Capital Partners.
Tiffany Kathleen, housing company.
Don Serhan, CR Builders, LLC. Grant Track, Thomas Development. Gerald Fritz, American Company. Jason Bold, Blue Line Development.
Nate Richmond, Blue Line Development.
Mylan Homework.
Sam Oliver, Missoula Housing Authority. Grace Albert, Missoula Housing Authority. Sutton Valley United Housing Partners.
Michael O'Neill, on the Housing Authority.
Corey Checkett, Grace Tech Social Impact. Great Parnell, Grace Tech Social Impact.
Martin from the Shred Thomas Development.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you all for being here today too. Okay, Joe, we'll go to you and online.
Online, I have Ryan Happney, Mike Nugent, Nancy DeRozier, Austin Trunkle, Grant Schnell, Alex Burkhalter, Matt Bells, Nicole Newman, Amanda Browning, Angela Getchell. Here with me, Troy Hart, Mike Boucher, Caleb Posey, Crosby Branch, Andrew Sermon, Joseph Walsh, Evelyn Camp, John Wagner, Tyler Currents, Emily Strasser, Larry Phillips, Catherine Daly, Gene Lure, Don Kessler, Tyson O'Connell, Jennifer Wheeler, and I have a phone number with area code 415. Can you please state your name? Area code 415 with last three digits 034. I asked them to unmute, but, oh. Appears to be Alex Tim.
Sorry,
There
I
you
was
go.
muted. This is Nina Chu with RBC.
Oh, okay, thank you, Mina. All right, that is all, Madam Chair.
All right, so next on our agenda is the minutes from the April 15th, 2025 meeting. Is there any board discussion or questions on those minutes? Is there any public comment or questions on the minutes?
See none.
Chair would accept a motion to approve the minutes as sent. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the April 15th, 2025 meeting. All board members in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any opposed, please vote nay. We'll now move on to the multifamily program with Jason Hanson, the moment you've all been waiting for. Go ahead, Jason.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today, so just a little bit of background in your packets were the letter of intent memo. The summaries, the worksheets, the spreadsheets, the economic data, demographic data, and on the table today, I put the 2005 9% awards because they were missing from the packet in there. So you have the narrative from each packet, and their mini market studies and any support letters. So today, no more than 8 projects will be selected during the round. Maximum award to any one project is $8.5 million. And when we're voting today, your top 3 projects will get 3 points, your next 3 projects will get 2 points, and your final 2 projects will get 1 point. And we'll go through when you're voting, just kind of talk about why you're voting for the project, what kind of characteristics you look at, and that way we have developers kind of know for next year how to plan projects. Development criteria then that you looked at, geographical distribution, is it rural versus urban, is it in a QCT, overall income levels targeted, need for affordable housing in a community, is it rehabilitation of existing low income housing stock, is there sustainable energy savings, financial operational ability of the applicant to fund, complete and maintain the project with extended use period, past performance of the applicant, cost of construction, land and utilities, including but not limited to cost credits per square foot. Is the project being developed in a historic downtown neighborhood, the frequency of awards, and any other sources of funds being used. Nonprofit, as we talked about yesterday, we have to have 10% of it with a nonprofit, which we will, because only 3 of them are not nonprofits. We have the rural spotlight on the top 2 projects listed. There are no tribal spotlights this year. And before we start voting, there will be an opportunity, if any board members have a question for any of the developers, we can ask them before we start voting.
We also have a public comment portion here. So is there any public comment on any project presented during the letter of intent proceeding yesterday? Public comment.
Seeing none, Madam Chair.
None from the audience? Okay, are there any questions that any board members wanted to ask regarding any of the applications? Right, we'll move forward with the voting then. I'll first call on Jeanette McKee to go through her top three, and next.
Yes.
Wait.
And let's pause just a minute so Brian can get the voting tally sheet up and going.
Yeah, just I can't stand out looking at you guys, so I'm gonna do this. That's not great for anything of the sort. But this was just a start. You guys were absolutely great yesterday. I've been here as Sheila and I for everybody for all these years. Presentations were succinct. They had great visuals, and it was easy to follow. And the notes that I took went with me last night, and I just give you guys all the credit in the world. And I wish we had, as you know, even the 8th that comes past today is going to be another round of fall. But I will move forward. I based my, you'll all know as I go through. I didn't use all the criteria, but I have a strong geographic distribution, which you'll see as we go along. And let's not talk about the community need. because we all know how we know, everything. The rehab is a big deal for me, important for me. And the past performance, because I know a lot of it. I don't know all of you, but I do know a lot of you here, and I know how you worked before, and that was important. And the time since receiving an award was also new. So I will start, on my first top three, the Towers buildings. It was the two apartment buildings, it's 81 homes, in Sage, it's 64 in Fraser, 145 units. And, this is Heather's Housing Partnerships, all your game. I know that, worked with you a lot. I think it's critical to save those kinds of units. That's my number one on Towers. The other number one comes to Missoula Midtown. It's feasible there to develop 200 affordable units, twin financial structure, in 9%, and I think that's my number second one. My third one is Anaconda's Peddler Pines. Last award was 2004. 24 senior units, and the number one need for Anaconda. And I have to say that I kind of know Anaconda in a way. It was my grandmother lived there at one time. But I really loved the hearing about the Anaconda growth and how it's moving forward and how it's being big and things like that. So those are my top three in the number ones. Number two, I'm Wildflower Apartments Rehab. I am back in Missoula when I do this. It is 96 units, 171 people. We can't afford to lose that stock. That's my second number two is Miles City, Saddlehorn Apartments. They haven't had rewards since 2006. 28 units. I did get a kick out of last check subdivision. That right. My last number two is Livingston's Sheep Mountain Residence. It's another new award since 2019, 48 units. The access to the wellness clinic, which would be basically free. I thought it was a real nice touch there. My last two, Hardin Senior Housing, substantial rehab is needed. A great support system there, the Pro Cheyenne churches. I really heard that. And my very last, number three was Buttes Granite Peak, 36 units, seniors. I liked the concept of opportunity for the community, camaraderie, people getting together. Those are my choices.
I agree with everything Jeanette said about the presentations were beautiful. And the written materials as well. My number one in the threes is Troy. Being a rural area and also the rehab and the geographic distribution. The second three would be Hardin. And again, it's rural and I like the amount as well. My third tree is Missoula Wildflower. And that's because of the people being served and necessary to keep it as well as the number of units. For my twos, Billings Tower, again, because of the number of units and the amount requested and people served, as well as the needed renovations. Another two is the Livingston Sheep Mountain, because of the need in the community and the community center nearby. The third, number two, is the Miles City Saddlehorn, because of its location and the geographic diversity and the length of time since an award out there. As to my number one, or as to a one, it's Missoula Midterm. For Midtown, again, it's necessary for the community. And the final number one is the Kalispell and Coast. Again, geographic and the cost per units.
Thank you, Jen. I'll go next. My top three are Troy. First of all, there's only subsidized rental in Troy. Really, that entire county is underserved when you look at population versus the number of units that have ever been funded. And I think it also, is appealing because of the ruralness of the city of Troy. Second is Anaconda Hindler, new units, there's 0 units there in the last 10 years, and I was very impressed with the city donating the land, having the foresight to buy the land and then donate the land, and of course that stretches our tax credit dollars. The third is Miles City Saddlehorn, again, underserved community relative to the population, and they have the lowest average income of any of the projects, so those are my top three. Next, Livingston, Riverstone Ridge, lowest unit cost appealed to me, and I think that Livingston, again, is one of those communities that, as many do, but it's underserved. Second, number 3 is Missoula Wildflower, and I was compelled by the condition and the urgency of this project and the preservation of so many homes that, again, appreciate the Missoula Housing Authority's willingness to carry this thing for however many years they did, and it's time to renew it. And then Butte Granite Peak, again, with a low unit cost, and I thought that stretched our dollars a little further. The next 2 for number 1s would be Missoula Midtown and Billings Tower, and those are both based on the number of units that can be produced overall with the 4 end. Richard, let's go to you.
Risk of being repetitive, I would say, what a wonderful bunch of presentations, a lot of passion and commitment to housing and a lot of fun in this. I can only say that it would be terrific to be able to provide funding for each of these projects. I didn't see a single one that didn't have serious need. The primary criteria that drove my points, it's interesting, this is my first meeting to do this, and I wasn't really sure if we were supposed to talk to other board members and get their thoughts, but since nobody reached out to me, I didn't reach out to anyone else. Because it is tempting when you're new to do this, you know, but some of the criteria were the same, for me. I mentioned yesterday, today I'm from Helena. That's not really true. I'm from Clancy. It's just a few miles away, but it's those several miles make a difference, and it's a very rural location that's been changing. And so the rural versus urban had some effect on my awarding of points. Frequency of awards, location had a significant drop. The biggest was the 2 would be rehab of existing stock and need in the community. And so with that in mind, and by the way, I think there's Jeanette who said, I mean, the need in the community, all these communities have significant needs. There's not a place in the state, I don't believe, that does not have a significant need, but all these projects are in places where the need is great, but that was part of the driver. So the number 3s, 3 points, I should say. Billings Tower. Wildflower Apartments. Saddlehorn Apartments in Miles City. The 2-point awards, 3 of them. Golden Lion in Troy. Hindler Pines in Anaconda. And again, the gift from the city had an influence me. That's the stretching of the dollars, the commitment of the community for that. That was really striking. Outpost at Kalispell. Those are the 3 2-point awards. And then the 1-point awards went to Riverstone Ridge, Livingston, and Granite Peak. Did I give all the, did I miss any? That was it. Thank you all.
Rhonda,
Rachel.
Rachel. Jeanette, Janine, or. Apparently that's the day.
I just want to thank you all, for all you do in solving Montana's housing issue, and so I'll just get right to my top three. So my number one is Wildflower Apartments in Missoula. My rationale was the preservation of the 96 existing units and, really strong demand with low saturation. My number two was Saddlehorn, Miles City. It's the first award in nearly 2 decades, and there's a strong demand for a really small market. My third is Copper Canyon Butte. Strong absorption and viability of view, and it's near the YMCA. Number four, so in the number twos, was Outpost, Kalispell. Highly affordable, in the gap that Kalispell has for affordable housing, and that strong community connection that they're trying to do with access to resources. And then my next was Sheep Mountain, Livingston. Strong local and county support, and then the access to the wellness center was appealing. And then Pitler Pines in Anaconda, senior housing in an underserved rural area with donated land. And then the number ones was Hardin Senior Housing. It offers the opportunity to strengthen housing stability for seniors in a small but underserved community. And then Granite Peak Butte, which addresses the senior demands as our state ages and they need
We'll just take a little short break while we figure this all out, add it all up. Wait for a report. Just talking here, we have no idea what everything is. Surprised us too.
We are fine.
Ben?
Yeah.
So I could propose to the board, we have a clear 6 projects, with highest votes, including Wildflower, Saddlehorn, Pitler Pines, Tower 9, Golden Lion Manor. And then I can't quite see, is it Sheep? Okay, and then Sheep Mountain. Then we have 4 projects that are tied at 5. So an option that the board could do is do a tie-breaking vote for those 5, voting for one project for 2 points and your second project for 1 point, to see if we can break that tie and move this forward.
Can you outline, first of all, I'd like you to repeat the ones that are in the top 6,
Please do that, Tim.
Yep.
Slowly.
All right, in the top 6, we have Wildflower Apartments, Saddlehorn Apartments, Pitler Pines, Tower 9, Golden Lion Manor, and Sheep Mountain. Those are in the towns of Missoula, Miles City, Anaconda, Billings, Troy, and Livingston.
okay, and so the ones that are tied.
The ones that are tied are Hardin Senior Housing, Midtown 9 in Missoula, Granite Peak in Butte, and the Outpost at Kalispell.
And you are suggesting.
We could suggest a tie-breaking vote where each board member votes for, of those 5, 2 points for their top project within of those 4, I'm sorry, and then 1 point for their second.
You want to give board members a few minutes to ponder that, which of those 4 they want to vote for on a 2.1 basis. Okay, so let's just take a few minutes to do that. And board members, you let me know. Yeah, let's start.
Would you like to call a full break? Come back in 5-10 minutes or just a few minutes?
Just a few minutes. Yeah, just a few minutes. Please, please let me know, board members. We can start the clock. Yeah, fine.
Madam Chair, should we pause the recording?
No, I think we'll get started.
Okay.
It's drum roll, right?
It's not your Jeopardy time.
Come through the wall.
Apologies for those joining virtually. There's some construction happening elsewhere in this hotel, so if you're getting that feedback, not much we can do about it, I don't think.
Okay, all board members have indicated that they are ready, so we'll do it in the same order. Jeanette, if you'd like to go with your votes first, please.
Yes, I would vote for Midtown and Granite Peak.
Don?
Hardin is an outpost. Hardin. Turn off the jackhammer. Hardin and outpost, Galveston.
And that might, Midtown and Granite Peak.
Well, I think
Hardin's list two.
Hardin's 2 from John.
Kalispell outpost.
You got me.
Yeah.
So I would vote, first choice is Midtown 9, and second is Granite.
And 2 points for Granite, 1 point, outpost to Kalispell.
My name is, 2 points outpost, Kalispell, Upland.
Oh dear.
Ready to wear?
Oh, we were. We had 6-4, so we'll need to do one more tie break.
That's 1 second, but we don't.
Yeah, so we could suggest to the board that we do one last tie breaking vote between the 3 that are tied now at 4, and so just vote 1 point per.
So which one is no longer?
So Hardin Senior received 3 points, and the other 3 projects, Midtown 9, Granite Peak, and Outpost to Kalispell.
So we have.
Yeah, what?
Oh, okay, so it's the
Move
top,
2 forward.
we're moving 3 forward, the top.
Yeah, we had 6. initially.
Yeah, we're moving 3 more forward to another round of voting. So there's a 3-way tie and we can only move 2 forward to invite for a full application.
So you're doing the floors, we're moving forward, and then we have.
And what are the 3 we're moving forward then? Just to be clear.
The ones we're gonna vote on.
Yes, right, the ones we're voting on, I'm sorry, no.
Missoula, Midtown 9, Granite Peak and Butte, and Outpost at Kalispell.
Okay, so again, board members, 2 minutes to. That. That's 3. And again, we'll do the 2. Number 1, we'll get 2 votes, number 2 again. I knew this was gonna be a hard vote.
Last one. Yeah.
So I think we can try to do it at 1 for 2 and then 1 for 1, and hopefully we can eliminate.
I'm really going for one, it's 10 minutes.
We're voting for 2, to advance 2 and these.
All of are.
So give 2 points to one of them, give 1 point to a second one, see if that breaks the tie up.
You ready? It's done?
Okay, so tell me again what we're voting on.
We're gonna advance 2 of these 3 projects, so if you could vote for 1 project for 2 points, your top, and then another project for 1.
What are the three?
They are the Midtown 9 in Missoula, Granite Peak in Butte, and Outpost at Kalispell.
Was the outpost at Kalispell is the 2, in Missoula, and the other is the.
Okay, ready for me?
Go ahead.
Granite Peak 2, Midtown 1.
Midtown 2, Granite 1.
Granite 2 points, outpost 1 point.
Outpost 2 points, Granite 1.
Okay, that brings us, Midtown 9, Missoula received 4 points, Granite Peak and Butte received 6, and Outpost at Kalispell received 5. So if the board would like to move Granite Peak and Outpost, and perhaps Brian can take a minute to move those over so we can see the entire slate of the 8 projects. Okay, so the slate of 8 projects includes Wildflower Apartments, 9 in Missoula, Saddlehorn Apartments, Miles City, Hitler Place in Anaconda, Tower 9 in Billings, Golden Lion Manor in Troy, Sheep Mountain 9 in Livingston, Granite Peak in Missoula, and the Outpost at Kalispell.
So Granite Peak is not.
I'm sorry, Granite Peak, Butte, in my readers.
Yes, I can't see it.
You just blow up that 8 right there to some people, it's so long, it's very-
No, they're actually there.
Yeah. Then move it up. a little bit.
That happens, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
it's not gonna burn.
All right, I think we're all aware when to start on that list. We have to read it one more time and then call for a
We have Wildflower Apartments 9 in Missoula, Saddlehorn Apartments in Miles City, Hitler Farms in Anaconda, Tower 9 in Billings, Golden Lion Manor in Troy, Sheep Mountain 9 in Livingston, Granite Peak in Butte, and the Outpost.
The charity entertain a motion to accept that slate to move forward in full application.
Move to accept this latest presented.
Second,
Been moved and seconded to move the 8 project as selected in the voting this morning forward for full application. Any discussion on the board? All those in favor, please say aye.
Probably have one more public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there any public comment?
Would you, my name's Joe Fritz, comment, would you announce the total amount of credits associated with this project?
Brian, is that something you can move over from the credit house or? Yeah, Gerald, is that something you want information live right here in this meeting? Because I can pull it up from yesterday's board packet.
I would like it, since the majority of the projects represent $8.5 million. With the exception of storage.
One second. Okay. So going down the list and, Brian, would you mind putting in column A, the dollar amounts as I list them on this so we can see it up on the screen? Okay, so Missoula Wildflower Apartments is requesting 8.5. City here. Saddlehorn Apartments in Miles City is also requesting 8.5. Kentler and Anaconda is requesting 8.5. Tower 9 in Billings is requesting 8.495. Golden Lion Manor in Troy is requesting 4.24. Sheep Mountain Livingston is requesting 6.7. Granite Peak in Butte is requesting 8.5. The Outpost at Kalispell is requesting 8.5. If I could just have someone double check because I'm reading a teeny tiny Excel spreadsheet. And if any developers in the room, if I got your amounts wrong, speak now for a piece. Oh, and can you, the total ask is just shy of 62, so it's 61.935. And we have for 2026 credits available, an estimate of 34.55 to award. So we're, got about double of what we have available.
Is there any further public comment? We have a motion on the floor to approve the slate as described on the screen. And verbalized by staff. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Thank you all for all of your efforts and time and second most difficult day that the board will face, the most difficult will be listening to the next all. Thank you all again, and we look forward to seeing it happen. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And we'll move on with multifamily. And we have a.
If there are any developers that want to exit, if you've got other things to attend to, we sure want to just give a couple of minutes for folks to depart before we resume. Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome to stay.
Would you look at your?
Yeah.
Agenda item to move forward. So next one up would be the Honor Two, Honor Code Agency, the credit refresh. So Honor Two is located on Code Agency. It's 9% housing credit project that was awarded $6,435,000 in 2023 housing credits. So that would have been the October 2022 meeting. Project developer is Absolute Nation Housing Authority, unit count. They're also requesting to go from 23 units down to 20 units. They're requesting credit refresh that would push their place in service date out 2 years. If approved, the credit refresh would effectively make the 2023 housing credits into 2025 housing credits and replace the service deadline would be extended to the end of 2027. In the motion options, we added in there, if you approve to move to the credit refresh, that we have to, the implementation schedule next. So if the implementation schedule isn't followed, then staff would issue the carry forward at the end of the year, which then would actually make the credits then come down, would remove the credits from this project if the implementation schedule isn't followed.
Okay, are there questions from the board on this proposal?
When you say they become 2025 credits, does that subtract from the 34 million?
We're basically just refreshing the state credits from 2020.
So they get added.
Yes, basically you're adding credits to this year's amount.
Further questions?
Jason, this is Bruce. What's the problem that they need the credit refresh for?
Good, and I believe Lorna is on. Lorna, could you answer that for Mr. Posey?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. I thought maybe I had to do an F something and I didn't hear that part and I was thinking I might be talking and nobody would listen, nobody would hear me, but wonderful. Yeah, so this project has been moving along since we received the credits. If you recall, there was an ANHA 1 project that had received credits as well, and the plan was to go from that project into this project. And that ANHA 1 project was a COVID project, and that lasted a whole lot longer than what we had hoped. Things got a little more expensive. The housing authority ended up having to act as a general contractor to save some money, and it became a little bit of a difficult process. We actually bid this project out in 2024, at the beginning of 2024, and had very little response. We were hoping we wouldn't have to be the general contractor, so we were hoping we could find groups that had the capacity to do the whole project. The response that we did get was very, very high, and we wanted to come to talk about a credit refresh for last year, but we were concerned because we noticed the QAP required you had to meet carryover in order to ask for that credit refresh. And so we did meet the carryover requirements, a 10% test. And we also were concerned that the board might ask us some questions that were more difficult to answer, and we wanted to have lots of answers. So we went back, so we got 2 bids in the first round. One of them was able to do the whole thing, but very expensive. The other one was just wanting to do bits and pieces of the project. And we thought maybe the board might be wondering, maybe we could go out to bid again and get better bids or more bids or whatever we could do. So at that time, we decided to ask Montana Board of Housing if they had local, like who's been working on tax credit projects in Montana and how are they able to do it more affordably than what we're getting. So we were given a list of 19 contractors. And we also reached out to, the original bidders, these 19 contractors. We actually emailed, phoned, had conversations with, let them know about this bid opportunity. And we also reached out to 3 national bidders that have done work on tribal projects throughout the country. So that ended up being after we met carryover, when we decided we'd wait to present it to the board. So in January, we had the bids. At the end of February, we received the new bids. There was again only 2 bids. One was from a national builder. The other was from a small group with very little financial capacity that only wanted to do part of the work. So, and the bid from the national contractor was extremely high. So at that time, that was the end of February, we went back to the original low bidder and this new low bidder, both with capacity to do the work. And we said, we need you to value engineer these bids because we cannot present this information to the board, and it is just, for whatever reason, it's way expensive. So we went back and gave an opportunity for both those bidders to do that. And we were able to get into a spot where we're actually able to do that work. I believe you've got the financial information. If not, I can rattle that off for you. But we went from very high costs to very manageable costs that still seem to be within your range of acceptability. So that's why it's taken so long. The investor's still on board. All of the due diligence has been done since early 2024. Again, ready to close at that time. However, the costs were just so out of whack. And the thought of ANHA acting as a general contractor, again, with those smaller bidders that could only do here and there, didn't make sense to us. So the team is still all assembled. With the exception of the contractor, both contractors are waiting for this meeting, and we're going to go back and see if we can work with both of them to see which one makes the most sense for ANHA. Is it the local group that's got the capacity, or is it this bigger group out of state? So that's where we're at. These numbers that we presented were based on the lower of the 2 bids, which was the national contractor. And I'm happy to answer any of the questions. I'll give it a pause, though, because I can sometimes be a little long-winded.
Thank you for your answer. I appreciate it.
I failed to mention that Bruce is able to vote on all items on the rest of the meeting. His conflict is only concerning the LOI, so to be an active participant. But I will carry on as chair. For continuity. So we have before us a proposal. Staff recommends this proposal. Is there any public comment about this proposal?
Seeing none online, Madam Chair.
Right. Chair would accept a motion to approve or disapprove the credit refresh from the 2023 housing credits to 2025 housing credits based on the developers meeting the new implementation schedule. If contracts are not executed and rehab is not started by the end of 2025, staff will not carry forward with the credit refresh.
So.
Second. Okay, I'll raise your second. Right, been moved and seconded to accept the staff report on this. Any comments from the board? Any public comment? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is still Jason, the program update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The update, as you see in front of you, not a whole lot has changed on here. The 3 buckets of money keep growing a little bit here and there. So you can see the cold trust about 203,000, multifamily loan program about 632,000. Housing Montana fund is just under $350,000. That was, yeah, that is it's on our dashboard today.
Questions, Jason, on the dashboard? Let's move on to accounting and finance. Last week you get that.
In your dashboard, excuse me, in your board packet, you
there's a graph of the investments. Diversification of investments, the majority, of our funds are invested in money market currently. There's not a lot available out on the market for, that meets our investment policy. So 67.2% of our funds are invested in money market, earning 4.23%. We have purchased 29.1 million of Ginnie Mae MBSs and 898,000 of Fannie Mae MBSs with the bond proceeds from the 2025 B and 2024 B and 2025 A issue. The average yield on our investments is decreased from last March to 4.61 at the end of March this year. The rate did increase slightly from 4.46 in February to March of this year. And the average rate does include the rates on the MBSs. The maturity schedule, the longest term maturities we have currently are the Fannie Mae and Ginnie Mae MBSs that we're currently purchasing. With the interest earnings that we receive on investments as well as the interest we receive on our mortgages, we have calculated the upcoming June 1st debt service, where we'll be making principal and interest payments of 36.5 million, which includes bond calls, maiden prepayments of 14.5 million. This will leave outstanding bond balance of just over 600 million in the 3 bond indentures. This does include the 2025 A issue that we just closed on. And there's no questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Further questions? Well, those numbers certainly look better than they did 2 years ago. All right. Is there any public questions on the finance program? Move on to the homeownership program with Jessica.
Good morning. The first thing on the agenda that I have is a reverse annuity mortgage application. A 78-year-old senior has applied for a reverse annuity mortgage in the amount of $150,000 against a property located in Bozeman. The borrower is requesting an initial advance of $25,000. Property is a condominium in the Brecken Place condominium project in Bozeman. And according to the appraiser, there are no obvious adverse easements, encroachments, land uses, or conditions that would affect the marketability of the property. The remaining useful life of the subject unit is 45 years, and the project is not FHA approved at this time. However, the subject property does meet the requirements set out in FHA Handbook 4000.1. The appraisal was completed on April 25th of this year, and the value is $565,000, and that would make the loan to value only 27%. The appraisal is subject to the following. As this is a FHA appraisal, the following items do not meet standards, and the appraisal has been prepared based on the subject to. The subject is missing a required railing in the upper level stairway. This presents a safety hazard for the unit, and the borrower has been informed of this deficiency and has agreed it will be corrected before the closing of the RAM loan. And I can tell you that as of this moment, we have proof that the railing has been installed, and we have pictures for the files, so that has been completed. Upon staff review of this appraisal and the additional documentation, we recommend you approve this RAM loan. And as you know, I am working on putting something together for the board to talk about whether we want to do FHA requirements on condos or not. So this again would be an exception.
Are there questions? Board, comments on this one? Are there any public questions or comments about this one? Chair would entertain a motion to accept the staff recommendation. On staff review of the appraisal and additional documents, the staff recommends the board approve this RAM. So the motion to disapprove. Then motion, second. Further board discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. We move on to the purchase price limits and the.
Yes, annually, we go through the purchase price limits and the income limits. Those are in your board packet. There's a couple of things I would point out. On the purchase price limit, for City of Great Falls, there is a typo. It's actually 665,173. It's just a typo. Most of the increases are 7% from last year and none increased. So the purchase price limits went up across the board.
So the board's not required to approve the purchase price limits, but we do have the option of setting limits lower than the safe harbor presented. And as staff says, given the high home prices throughout the state, staff recommends using the limits as presented to assist as far as possible. So I'm reading this, we do not need a motion unless we want to change something.
That's right.
Just one quick comment that these are startlingly high. They're anything, they're really, but that's good because it's reflecting reality out there, which is amazing. Which higher it's getting. All right, so we'll leave those intact without a motion, and then how
You
about?
want me to go over income limits?
Yes, do that now, please.
Oh, sorry. No. Income limits, most of the income limits increased 7 to 9%. However, you might notice that Carbon County and Yellowstone County did go down 1%. I'd just like to note that last year they went up 6, so this might be just some sort of like bringing it back down to a more reasonable manner, limits for those two counties. There's also one more typo in Macomb County. For a large household for 2025 should be 111,934,000. We did have to add several counties to our list this year, as they were not all put together in other targeted areas. It just seems that they're getting more finite in looking at each county and adjusting the limits for each county instead of grouping them all together.
So the board has the option of setting program income limits at or below the safe harbor limits. Staff recommends the board approve the attached income limit. So it sounds like we do need a motion for this. Is there any board comment or questions about this proposal? Is there any public comments about the proposal? Chair would accept a motion to approve the income limits as shown in the board packet.
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further board discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, say nay. All right, motion carries. Move on to the program update then.
Dashboard, yes. Just to go over a few things on my dashboard, you'll see the loans purchased by Idaho was 39 for the month of April for $11 million. The average turn times for the lender reserving to being reviewed is about 36 days in total. They have a 60-day lock, so our lenders seem to be adhering to making sure that they reserve closer to the time of closing and not incurring late delivery fees and extending that lock. So that seems to be going well. You'll notice that delinquency rates are kind of holding steady. We have several in foreclosure coming up in June. We have 9. I don't know if you want to more detail about that. Mary can also talk to that if she's online. But they seem to be kind of holding steady, just like the upticks. And of course, our weighted average and our portfolio is going down because now we have more loans going to be serviced and purchased by Idaho and to an MBS.
Any questions on the mortgage servicing? I'm sorry, on the home ownership program. Any other questions on the homeownership program? Let's move to the mortgage servicing update. Is Mary available?
She is.
Go ahead, Mary.
There she goes.
Here I am. Sorry about that, Madam Chair, Board. Good morning, everyone. Yes, for the servicing program dashboard, we do have, let me just see if I can pull something up. I can see a little bit better here. A total effective April 30th. We have approximately 6,250 loans. Board of Housing loans are 5,580. Board of Investments, 291. We have 21 multifamilies and 356 half loans from the Homeowners Assistance Fund, approximately 725.3 million. And we have 7.9 million in our escrows. And this week we are going to be paying out quite a bit of that for property taxes and lost draft. We're dropping that down a little bit. For borrowers that may have had some type of insurance claim, we help process those claims with the borrowers and the insurance companies and contractors. Lost loans delinquent 60 plus has gone down a little bit from last month, but up from last year. We did not have any foreclosures last month, and foreclosures for the total calendar year has been 2. Delinquent contacts to make. That's basically our early payment defaults all the way to 90 plus days past due has gone down a bit too from last month, but and also last year. Late fees, we had 940. So the increase of going past 16 days is definitely more than last month and last year. We got about $29,000 income there. 24 payoffs, and we had 4 new loans. As far as loss mitigation, we have 2 partial claims pending, 6 Chapter 13 bankruptcies. We have 6 preservation properties and 1 real estate owned property. We are having some increase in loss mitigation. There will be some updates effective in October 2028 and October 2025 and February of 2026. We will be starting more on the early default interventions and also for permanent home retentions and starting trial period plans, which is something new that we've been training with staff. So I do see that we will be working a little bit more closely with the borrowers, which I think will be great. And then also, I do want to share some of the foreclosure. I don't have it in the dashboard this month, but next month, there'll be more documentation on foreclosure status for the portfolio of Board of Housing. And we have approximately effective April 28th, 2025. We have 35 foreclosures pending, and out of those foreclosures, there's 21 pending, and there's actually 14 that are scheduled. And I believe we have 7 scheduled in June, and we have 2 scheduled in July. The rest are scheduled out in September. And I think last month I might have estimated about 5 that may actually go to foreclosure. I've looked at them a little bit closer. It might be more like 6 or 7 that will actually go, and we can tell, deceased borrowers don't have family that take over the property. We've had a few that are incarcerated. So those are the main reasons why they will most likely go through. We'll see an uptick in the short sales. I think we will have 1 or 2 this month. And then as far as, it's interesting that the county, city, we have the number 1 was Billings. There are 8 foreclosures pending. And in Butte is number 2 at 6. And then we have Great Falls following behind at 5, which the principal balance is about $440,000 for Great Falls. Almost $1 million for Billings, and then we have about 780,000 in Butte. These are just the principal balances of the foreclosures. Total principal balance is interesting. It's almost $5 million of loans that are in foreclosure, including other 35 loans. I think that's pretty much it. If you'd like to know more information or if you have any questions, just let me know.
There are questions from the board? Carrie, is there any way to tell what the asset is valued versus the foreclosure amount? Yeah, see what I'm saying?
Yeah, good
Go ahead.
question. We have the appraised value at origination in our system, but we don't, unless we looked up each value of the home and did an assessment, we don't really have that.
No, I can see that it'd be difficult. I think the other thing that might be helpful to know is just the age of the loan, because if it's an older loan, probably has a longer time to gain equity.
Yeah, that's good. And we also, you know, Doug Jensen, the foreclosure specialist with at Home Ownership, he did do a origination, foreclosures by origination, you know, from 2002 to 2023. And it was very interesting that 2021 was $1.2 million and all the other ones were quite a bit lower. So we could, you know, maybe take a look at that report and see if that can help us with the areas and the values of the properties.
So I think might be helpful for the new board members too. Tell us about what happens after a foreclosure in terms of being reimbursed for the outstanding loan amount.
Sure. You know what, it depends on what happens. So at foreclosure, there are some options. So it could be third-party sale, which are our favorite, usually a make whole. So we get all of our money back. It was total indebtedness. Everybody pretty much leaves happy. You know, the borrower gets paid, we get paid, and then the bidder usually gets a fairly good deal. So then we, after all is said and done with those third-party sales, we do a cash disbursement request to Montana Board of Housing. So us as a servicer are asking Home Ownership, will you please reimburse us these expenses that we put into this house and the property and everything? And so we go through that process. Or if it just actually goes to foreclosure to the insured, if it's FHA, if it's perfect property, it's in good condition, we convey it back, we file claims. We file a Part A for principal, we file a Part B for all of the expenses and things. And then we also, again, file a CDR with Home Ownership. So we do, you know, majority get our money back. And then for VA, basically we convey the property after the sale, the property goes into their name, and then they take care of the dispositions of the property. And with RD, it's a little bit different. After foreclosure, then that's where Doug, our foreclosure specialist, actually does a marketing plan and sells the property based on the criteria that RD wants us to sell it. There's a mathematical formula that we need to work with, and of course the regulations. And then also, like I was saying earlier, short sales are tending to come up a little more. We did do a VA short sale, I believe it was February. We have a couple of FHA short sales, so they owe just a bit more than what the property is worth now. The values are coming down just a bit. And they can't, you know, they put it up for sale, and then we work with the realtors and the attorneys and the borrowers, and we just make sure that we also follow the guidelines with FHA and VA to allow the short sale. And then usually, you know, everybody kind of walks away pretty happy on that too. And we file a claim for the difference that we actually can't be made whole because it's short. And again, you know, filing the CDR cash disbursements with Home Ownership too. Is that helpful?
Yeah, very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any further questions? Is there any comment or question from the public? All right, let's move on to the operations program and the executive director.
The next board meeting is gonna be Monday, June 9th via Zoom. Board member opportunities, again, the housing partnership conference that's being held at the Billings Hotel and Convention Center is next week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So we look forward to seeing you there. The closing plenary will also include a panel celebrating the Montana Board of Housing's 50th anniversary. So it's going to be awesome. Bruce is going to be there, Brensdahl, Cheryl, Pat Melby, and Maureen Root are all confirmed for the panel. So if you can be there, please. It's going to be awesome. Contracts and procurement. This is just for upstairs for the folks in rental assistance team that was executed. That contract, it was a software contract executed for renewal with an amendment on it for switching from Amazon Workspace to the Citrix platform. So, and along with updating their FileMaker software. So that was executed and all wrapped up and done. Some staffing updates for servicing. Michelle Garza, she was a loan and bond specialist with that team. She resigned from her position. Staff are exploring options for a temporary worker. I believe, Mary, maybe you hired one that's starting next Monday for that temp position. And then they're going to be shifting some of the hazard insurance work in this portion, possibly to an outside vendor. Kylie Hughes, if you recall, she was the executive assistant back in 23 to 24. Yeah, 2022 to 2023, excuse me. She came back after being away and going to another agency and then moving to the private sector. She came back and we hired her on as an executive assistant, an administrative assistant that was vacated by Haley Danko, who moved to another position in commerce. So we welcome Kylie back. That's really all I have for the operations dashboard. Pretty quiet month last month. So.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, I'll dive in for the rest. So the pro-housing grant that we were awarded from HUD has transitioned to the community MT division because its focus is really on community planning. So the Board of Housing, the Commerce Housing Division will be directly involved, but interested parties can review the pro-housing action plan and related activities under the community MT division. They're working on a website, as well as some of the housing staff will support the community MT staff with the behind the scenes. For the ARPA Homeowner Assistance Fund, they're working to streamline the home repairs program to expedite applications more quickly. Mortgage reinstatement applications have slowed down a bit, so the team will be sending in an email to the various servicers on a quarterly basis to let them know that we're still up and running and accepting applications. And as of May 1st, just shy of 3,000 applications have been submitted. And the staff have approved and paid close to $16 million in total for all the statewide homeowner assistance application programs. For the community housing team, our 2025 through 2029 consolidated plans through the public comment period. We expect HUD to provide our 2025 allocations, hopefully tomorrow. Montana's consolidated plan will be submitted to HUD shortly after receiving the allocation amounts. HUD signaled that we expect the same funding levels as last year, so we anticipate about $2.7 million in both Home and National Housing Trust Fund, and about $1.5 million in CDBG for housing. And finally, Montana's 2024 Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report, CAPER, is being developed now, and a draft will be available next Monday when the public comment period begins. We also have a public comment meeting regarding the CAPER on May 22nd and looks at comments through June 6th. So this CAPER is kind of summarizes the outcomes of how we said we would intend to spend the money in the annual action plan, and the CAPER is how did we really spend the money and what were the investments. So going on, we have a little bit here about the 2025 fair market rents. For any of you attending the partnership conference in Billings, we will have a panel with myself, Mike Lodian with Helena Housing Authority, and Megan Field from DPHHS. This was a collaborative partnership where the Behavioral Health for Future Generations Commission allocated up to $1 million to fund this survey, which Governor Gianforte approved. We had a very robust timeline, and we did get those submitted to HUD and HUD published revised FMRs based on our survey in April. At the end of March. So we're working to publish new voucher payment standards based on those revised fair market rents with a July 1 effective date. And there's still some slowness and kind of back and forth with HUD. These fair market rents appear to directly impact the annual budget authority, the public housing authorities, including the statewide housing authority within Commerce will receive. And so even though it's showing up in what are called our two-year tool, a cash management tool, we still haven't gotten the official correspondence from HUD of what it actually is, but we're trying to ramp it by doing a waitlist purge now so we can reopen and start issuing vouchers in all the ways to get folks housed. Also included in your packet, and I won't go through it, but just for board members or interested members of the public, Montana Board of Housing provided some input to the NCSHA letter that was provided to HUD Secretary Scott Turner around recommendations to eliminate, streamline, or reduce regulatory barriers. And then we are also aware of the Trump administration's skinny fiscal 26 budget proposal, which was published earlier this month. And I've included a little bit of a summary from NCSHA. This is available on the NCSHA blog on their website. We appreciate them providing these sort of recaps of what is happening. So within the discretionary HUD programs, it proposes eradicating large swaths of the Department of Housing and Urban Development. With respect to rental assistance, it would eliminate federal rental assistance programs, including tenant-based housing choice vouchers with Section 8 and project-based rental assistance, and replace them with a as yet to be determined block grant formula to states. And then it also encourages, quote, states to provide funding to share in the responsibility to ensure that similar levels of recipients can benefit from the block grant. And it also proposes a 2-year cap on rental assistance for, quote, able-bodied. The budget also would dramatically cut or eliminate most HUD block grant programs, including the Community Development Block Grant, the Home Investment Partnerships Program. And so those are concerning things that we're monitoring. It would also eliminate or significantly cut other HUD programs, including consolidation of continuum of care and housing opportunities for persons with AIDS, and the Emergency Solutions Grant that in Montana is administered through the Department of Public Health and Human Services, as well as native grant programs and the Family Self-Sufficiency Program. It also doesn't leave USDA rural development untouched. It proposes to eliminate most single-family housing direct loans and self-help housing grants. These are obviously something that the board, we purchase a lot of RD loans. Habitat for Humanity affiliates are often using those single-family housing loans as well. So we don't know what we don't know yet, and I think we just take the stance of, well, this is out there and we're aware of it, and Congress has a lot of work to do, so we'll continue to monitor that. I will note that as of, I think this morning or yesterday afternoon, there was a bill introduced, I believe, at Ways and Means Committee that does include the provisions for the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act that we're all really hoping to see. And it also doesn't propose any shift in the tax exempt bonds that we use, which was something we were concerned about. Again, no guarantee that that won't change as the process moves forward, but good that we all have open eyes on what we may anticipate and how we can be nimble and responsive.
We have a number for that bill.
I do have one. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I can follow up. For Montana's legislative session, there's the bill tracker in your packet. I'll cover the main ones that actually passed. House Bill 63 was just kind of a typical bill that renews the Bond Validating Act, so that connects with Montana's volume bond cap bill. House Bill 505 was returned from enrolling. This provides additional funding to the Board of Investments Montana Housing Infrastructure Revolving Loan Fund, and makes a few adjustments on the usage for that program. There was a bill to propose a property tax deferral loan program that ended up getting tabled. Also tabled the mobile home park relocation, emergency relocation account, and the authorized additional funding for the Coal Trust Loan Program. I'll come back to House Bill 924 in just a second. House Bill 931 also passed and returned from enrolling. This includes some language around allowing nonprofit development and management of attainable workforce housing on state lands. House Bill 405 was tabled. Again, some of those elements got moved into House Bill 924. The governor's appointees for Board of Housing obviously was filed. The resolution for housing density and affordability passed, so that will be moving forward. The study resolution for landlord tenant and mobile home was tabled, and the study resolution for coordinated homeless services did pass out of its last committee, but failed to move forward before the sentencing. So moving on, if you want to just kind of glance through the letter and move to the slide deck, and this is the last thing I'll cover.
Cheryl, I just wanted to do a quick, item on the Bush's bill. So it's enrolled and then sent to the governor.
It's enrolled, and then I think it's got to go through a signature by the president, secretary of state, or president, I'm sorry, I think it goes to the governor first. I think the governor has 10 days, and then it gets,
Okay, so none of these have been signed by the governor yet, looks like, or at the time of this report.
at the time when I put this together about a week and a half ago, they had it, but I'll be able to provide you guys an update with the signing. So the main bill that impacted the Board of Housing was House Bill 924 to establish a new growth and opportunity trust and a Montana Housing Trust underneath that. This has been at enrollment since the end of last month. It hasn't moved further in the process. So we're waiting to see if this will be signed. I'm not going to go through all of this. It is a quite complicated bill. It clocks in, I think, over 50 pages. But the concept is essentially to move some of the programs that were connected with the Coal Trust Tax Fund and move them into another structure, and then provide an ongoing transfer of interest revenues or volatile funds to shore up some of these accounts. So this bill includes kind of it all. It includes water, bridges, childcare, tax relief, state of Montana employee pensions, and housing. So on the second slide, sections 2 through 5 of the bill establish that for the 50% of volatile revenue flows, 20% will be reinvested back into the newly established Housing Montana Fund. Then if you just want to go to the second to last slide, the Montana Housing Trust, I'll get that recap. One more now. Oh, 200. There we go. All right. So within the Growth and Opportunity Trust is a sub-trust called the Montana Housing Trust. It will bring in the Coal Trust Multifamily Homes Program and our Veterans Home Loan Program that were currently tied to the Coal Trust Tax Fund. And then it also pulls in the Montana Housing Fund. It establishes about 31 million in transfers to that Montana Housing Trust over the biennium. And then again, that 20% reinvestment portion until the Montana Housing Trust balance equals 500 million. This is the first time I'm aware of in state of Montana history that there will be ongoing statutory appropriations for affordable housing, subject to the governor's signature. We have a meeting this Friday with the Department of Revenue. They're listed in the bill as the administrator of the Growth and Opportunity Trust. The Montana Housing Trust is silent, but it's underneath the GO Trust, and so it's presumed that that is also administered by Department of Revenue. Department of Revenue doesn't do investments and loans. And so we have kind of an all-in meeting this Friday with DOR, Budget Office, Board of Investments, and the Department of Administration, kind of work through a lot of logistics. These fund transfers need to occur by August 1st. And then how do we go about funding new loans going forward? Who records these on their financial statements? All of that is to be worked out. So we also are coupling a conversation about the administrative rules that we'll need to establish an update for all 3 programs. That will be part of our QAP workshop meeting on May 28th. Yeah, I believe it's May 28th. So we would.
First week of June.
Okay, we can follow up with the board. But I think that might be a helpful meeting to attend, both to hear about the QAP amendment proposals, as well as discuss administrative rules for these programs. We'll probably have to set up a new section in ARMS to talk about with the new revenues coming in, how do we disperse it between the 3 programs? So certainly we want to be able to do more loans for veterans. So we want to have some of those funds come in, but we do want to have a good deal with these new revenues supporting that gap financing. And so it does establish that the Coal Trust, the initial 65 million that we have, there are still some strings attached as that 65 million revolves. They removed the provision that ties it to the Coal Trust performance yield for the interest rate. So we can establish the interest rate for the program in rules. It did not remove the subject to payment of property taxes requirement. So what we could do is, obviously that 65 million will have to revolve there, but for the new revenues coming in, we could direct those to the Housing Montana Fund where we have a bit more flexibility and don't have the subject to payment of property taxes. So very much open to feedback from the board, and we'll be bringing in those draft administrative. That's what I got.
So yay,
Yay.
first time ever. And as usual, it was the last 6 days of the legislative session that it all came together, but I know Cheryl, you and other staff has worked really hard to get this work. Last year, we ended up with kind of an unworkable bill. And so now it's nice to see this one looking more reasonable. What about the bullet trust loan requirement first review?
They retain the first lien position requirement in that.
So the 65 will always be tainted that way. The 65 million will always be tainted with property taxes in first lien position unless a future legislative session addresses that. Right. I think those are the two biggest problems. Well, and the interest rates as well. So it would be nice to be able to have housing lenders be able to set the interest rate. That's. All right, gosh, thank you. That was a lot. Is there any questions about this? The Go Trust? Anything on the rental assistance dashboard that you wanted to cover, Carol?
I'll just cover that we are, like I mentioned, working on a WAPUS purge now, and then we will be working with our field agency partners to issue vouchers, get those on the streets. We're going through the final amounts for the new revised fair market rents, and it appears we're probably going to set our new voucher payment standards at about 110% of those newly revised fair market rents. So that will be, I think, a benefit, and we've had a lot of conversations with the other local public housing authorities to make sure we're kind of more or less in sync with how we're approaching that. Obviously, because of the Trump administration skinny budget proposed, we're opting not to do, really broad press release on the results of that fair market rent survey. Because, let's see how this year goes. But we don't want to kind of get out over our skis and kind of tout that something is going to be amazing if the whole programs end up shifting significantly. So we're just cautiously optimistic. It was certainly well worth the funds. I think we only ended up expending about 315 million or 315,000. Sorry, out of that 1 million appropriation. So like well under half budget to deliver those results.
So one thing we used to have on the rental dashboard was the wait list, and I understand the purging process and all, but that would be helpful to restore that. So, we use it a lot. Montana Housing Coalition, just a proof of the concept or proof of fact that yes, there's a huge need for additional resources. Absolutely. Thank you very much.
And we did get our new 5-year annual plan and our new public housing authority administrative plan approved by HUD on Monday. So those are available on our website and go into the website.
So once again, I'm just struck with what happens in the background and we know nothing about it. Those kinds of plans, etc. Within the housing division. So please take our thanks to the staff of that group as well as the Board of Housing itself. Is there any other business to come before the meeting today?
Madam Chair, this may be my last meeting as a board member, or it may not be. But I want to say how much I appreciate how the staff, the work that they do, and keep us informed and so organized, and don't show up for meetings that don't happen, or those kind of things that happen with other boards that I've been involved in. So.
And what is the status of John's replacement?
So we do have an application into the governor's office for an appointments folks, and we're just waiting to hear back. At the time, we submitted an application of someone who is licensed to practice law in the state of Montana, as that was the requirement that we needed one board member at the time. But there was a bill that was passed in the legislative session that removes that attorney requirement for not just the Board of Housing, but boards more generally speaking. And so the governor's staff asked if we, still wanted to proceed with who we had submitted, knowing that it could be open, and we said we would like to proceed, subject to the governor.
So once we're outside the legislative session, then the governor does a direct appointment?
Yes.
Doesn't have to go to Congress, it doesn't have to go to the legislature.
Correct. Yeah, they, could be subject to Senate confirmation, you know.
Okay, so the vote trust bill is not signed by the governor yet, but indications are good. Pretty good. Just from the point of view that, the bill sponsor worked closely, that a lot of. All right, any other business number for the meeting?
Hope to see, some of you down in Billings on Monday.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Thanks for hanging in there, Bruce.
Thank you.
Did he?